If you hit a point in your private practice where you are bored or burnout, it's important to revisit the big why that you have. And maybe it changes over time too, because that's definitely possible. I mean, I think for me, it's important to have fun in my work. Like it's always, work is work, but I like to have fun and enjoy what I'm putting my time and energy into.
Welcome to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. This episode is sponsored by the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. Hi, I'm Janine Wolf, and I'm your colleague down the hall. I have a passion for helping fellow therapists get the clinical and collegial support we all need to do this work. And wow, it just keeps getting harder every day. I'm the founder and facilitator of the Collab Oasis Clinical Consultation Groups. I have been a social worker for almost 30 years, and I own a successful solo online private practice. More of us than ever are practicing in solo or online practices, and we all need colleagues to process cases with, commiserate with on those really hard days, and also to celebrate our successes with. In this podcast, I'll bring you insights about trends and changes in our field and sit down with amazing therapists who are doing amazing work. We'll discuss fictionalized cases, ways to practice sustainably, and of course, there will be plenty of laughing. I love laughing with friends. I'm so glad to have you as one of my colleagues down the hall. Hello, everyone. You are listening to another episode of the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. I'm your host, Janine Wolf, joined today by Uriah Guilford. Uriah is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he's the owner of a group practice in Northern California. He's the creator of Productive Therapist, a virtual assistant company that serves therapists in private practice. He's also a technology nerd, a minimalist packer, which is the opposite of me, a rock drummer, and a business development enthusiast. Today, we're going to talk about productivity and balancing the clinical with the business aspects of our work. Uriah will share 5 tips to be a productive therapist, learn how to make the most of your time and energy, how to get everything done without working too many nights and weekends, how to take more vacations, and design your practice to serve your life and your personal goals. Welcome, Uriah.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So you basically encompass all the things I need in my life. I'm ADHD, so I struggle with all of those things and having good systems in place. For me, systems work great until they don't anymore, and then I have to reinvent the wheel. So I'm loving that you have put together the program that you have. You offer VAs as well as coaching.
Yeah, we have virtual assistants that will kind of handle your intake coordination for you, back office tasks, and some marketing. And then we also have training programs where we train other people's staff, as well as some coaching that we do on the side also. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, that's great. And you've been doing this for a while, right?
We're in year 6 of Productive Therapist, believe it or not. Yeah.
Wow.
And I have a group practice as well. So it's a lot, but it's fun. I love it.
Good. So how did you get started with your focus on the productivity in private practice?
That's interesting. I think I've always been the type of person that's been super organized and focused on productivity just because that's who I am. And I make a joke in the book that I wrote recently on how organized I am, and just ask my family, just look at my sock drawer. You'll see that, that is who I am by nature. And I initially wanted to start a blog that was going to talk about all the software and the tech tools that I use to run my private practice, just because, as you said in the intro, I love technology and marketing and all those kind of things. And I love sharing resources with other people, whether they're therapists or just friends and family. So if I was literally walking down the hall and stepping into your office and we were having a conversation, just by the nature of who I am, I would probably tell you about something that was like a technology tool or some other kind of resource, just because I just love that. I love that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was originally,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it was originally going to be a blog, and then it turned into a virtual assistant company, and then it turned into a coaching business, and it just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah. That's great. And so with having a book and a VA company and a group practice, you have to have your ducks in a row to manage all that, I would imagine.
And if you don't, it's not good.
Yeah. One of the things I hear from therapists all the time is that
they struggle with balancing the business aspects of a private practice. And a lot of times it's simply they just don't set aside admin time. They just expect it to sort of happen. And then they realize they're way behind and they really struggle. So I would love to hear the tips that you have about some of these things.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, I think, one of the things that I wrote down when I was coming up with the 5 tips to be a productive therapist. So we'll definitely get into that, I think. But I wanted to say too, like when I think about and talk about productivity, for me, it's not just about being efficient and working more and getting a lot of things done just for the sake of working.
Right.
In fact, our tagline at Productive Therapist is we help therapists get more done so you can have more fun. So
I love that.
For me, like I do enjoy the aspects of productivity and organization just in and of themselves. But for me, it's also about just like getting things done in an efficient way so that I can hang out with my kids and so that I can go hiking and backpacking with my friends and enjoy my life and go travel and things like that. So
and that's so important. Yeah, that's important because most of us work for ourselves because we want the flexibility and freedom. We also don't want to share a cut of our fees, but then most of us go into I know for myself, when I started my solo practice, I was going to see anyone, anytime, anywhere. Like I just wanted to fill the practice. I was anxious about that. I was working so many hours and I really had to buckle down on like, no, I have set hours. I see clients. I only see them then. Not everyone is the right client for me. Like really getting clear in my mind about how I could run a business so that I could have the lifestyle I wanted, not go to the opposite end. In fact, some of my members and I were talking recently that we will frequently joke that our boss is an asshole, that we don't treat ourselves very well, and so that's what we want to avoid. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, small business owners in general tend to work way more than full-time employees. I was actually researching that recently for a presentation that I gave, and it was surprising to see the percentage of people who work more than 50 hours.
Oh my gosh.
And I think therapists do that too. Maybe we might work less hours, but the work that we do is more taxing emotionally, right?
Yes.
So, 25 client week is a lot. And some people even do more than that. And then there's the notes and everything else on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But working less
definitely takes a toll. When I was with a group practice, I was seeing 38 clients a week. It was 45-minute sessions, but there were no breaks or I didn't have a lunch break unless somebody canceled. And I did that for a number of years and I do not recommend it. In fact, one of my top tips is take a lunch break, please. Yes. Even if you're someone who doesn't eat lunch or whatever, please at least take a break, not where you're writing a note, but just like clear your mind, relax your body. That's all those things we would tell our clients. Yeah.
My boss is an asshole. That's funny. Yeah. We need to treat ourselves better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it definitely gets easier over time. It's scary when you're first starting out. And, at that time I had a physical space. So I had rent and utilities, and it's easier when you have a virtual practice like I do now, because then the overhead is less, but you still are, you still have overhead costs that you're paying.
I'm curious, what are the challenges that you hear people talking about with private practice? You mentioned like making time for taking care of the business aspects. What else do you hear?
There's a lot of concerns about understanding how to market and not knowing that there's ways that they can market that will fit their personality and their style. A lot of it's jumping into it and feeling like they have to have everything perfect before they get started. I have to have the perfect website. I have to have all these things. My first website was a free WordPress one that had all the like gut health ads and stuff on the sides. And it was literally one page because I already, having been in a private practice group, I already had some referral sources and people knew me, and I needed just really a place where I could send them to get my phone number and ways to schedule and stuff like that. But really feeling like you have to have all these things done before you get started. And, for most of us, that's never going to happen. Never are you going to have everything just perfect.
No, it's not realistic either. Yeah. I think as far as, talking about productivity goes, one of my best tips is to learn and focus on what you're uniquely good at, focus on your strengths and outsource as much as possible. It's a little bit harder when you're new in private practice or when it's just you, but it's definitely possible to maybe, just for example, skip building your own website and hire somebody to build it for you, because there's experts out there that can do all kinds of things for us, marketing related, website related, accounting, bookkeeping, those kind of things. And I think
Yeah.
one of the traps that we fall into, especially therapists starting their own private practice, is by the nature of the starting a private practice, we end up doing all the things ourselves. And
Yes.
we're not good at all the things: marketing,
Right.
networking,
Right.
billing,
Everything.
everything.
All of those
And
things.
so it's hard for us to outsource and or get help with some of those things. But it's a good idea.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is so much something that men experience, but all of my members are women, and I interface with a lot of women therapists, and a common thing that I hear is there's guilt about outsourcing things. And I had a whole conversation with one of my groups about, I pay someone to clean my house. And I grew up in a family where we cleaned the house as a family, and that was something that was expected. And at one point I realized what I'm paying someone to clean the house, if I have one clinical hour, that's going to cover that cost. And it's going to take me a lot longer than one clinical hour to clean my house because I hate cleaning and I get distracted. And so accepting that this was a good business decision was something that I find is hard for a lot of women, and really trying to shift that focus of, let's look at dollars and let's look at what makes most sense for your time and your income. That's
so true. And I think I understand, maybe not from the female perspective necessarily, but I think my example would be outsourcing yard work. Like why can't I do my own yard work? Well, I can. It's just that my time is better spent focusing on growing my business. And to be honest, I don't love doing yard work. So that's something that makes sense for me to do. And when you start, like you were saying, when you start to look at the math of it, it's pretty convincing, right?
Yes.
Because, if you've never built a website before, just going back to that example, it could take you so many hours. Like you could easily spend 40, 50, 60 hours figuring out how to build a website. And, most therapists make somewhere between $75 to $250. I don't know. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
You could find somebody on Fiverr.com, for example, to build you a simple website. So it definitely is economical to use your time wisely. And we only have so much time and energy to expend.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I started, I watched YouTube videos and did research and did everything myself. And it was exhausting. And then when I created the second business, Collaboasis, again, it's learning all the tech and all the different things. And I was so tech burnout that I remember I got to a point where I was like, I just want to pay someone. I don't even care how much it costs. I need to pay someone to do this because my brain just cannot learn any more new things. Right. And I talk a lot about conserving our energy, and that if we are putting all of our energy into doing something like that, it's and websites necessary for our practice, but initially it's not really going to be a good marketing tool till we get the SEO up. And so you're draining yourself doing this thing that's going to impact your client work. It's going to impact your time off, all of those things.
Yeah, that's so true. I wish I would have learned some of the things I know now, like 5 to 10 years ago.
Exactly.
But I also think if it's something that's fun, that's one of my rules. Like if it's something that I'm learning about that benefits my business and I'm enjoying it,
yes,
I give myself free reign to go down any rabbit hole if it's something that I want to learn about. I don't know, for example, like artificial intelligence, how to use artificial intelligence to grow your practice. Like that's pretty interesting to me. So I'm watching videos and looking up websites. The one I was looking at this morning, one of the common problems that we all have as therapists, I'm retired now, but retired from therapy, is writing notes. Everybody struggles with that, right? And it potentially takes so much time, and it's just a huge challenge. I don't know if you've seen some of these apps that are coming out that help you write your progress notes.
Yeah, I actually did a podcast episode a few before this one where I did a panel discussion with Lyeth from Person Central Tech, Kim Tolson, who has written a course, and a couple of other people just talking about the use of AI. And there's some platforms out there that record your session and then they write a magic note. And I was like, I still think AI is going to kill all the humans at some point, but I'm so intrigued with AI, and I'm in a low fee membership that teaches you how to do all the prompts and things to really get what you're looking for. I really haven't used it yet for clinical work, but I'm using it for lots of other applications. And honestly, at this point, my progress note is so drilled down to exactly what I need to put that I can get it done in just a couple minutes. But yeah, that's fascinating
I
and
would love to go listen
controversial
to
all at
that.
the same time.
I'd love to go listen to
Yeah.
that panel. That sounds super
Mm-hmm.
interesting. The one I was looking at this morning is unique in that it doesn't allow you to put any PHI into the prompt.
Okay.
Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
even an option, and it will spit out it, like you basically check boxes, and then it gives you the note, and then you can customize it if you want.
Okay.
But I thought that was kind of cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah. And we're seeing more and more about this. And there are large hospital systems that are starting to use this for their doctors. And once again, as we discussed in the podcast, technology is developing so much faster than any of our regulations and needing to understand that. So yeah, I hope you check out the episode because we covered all kinds of interesting thoughts around that.
I mean, Kim Tolson and Lyeth Dalton are two amazing people. So
yes, absolutely.
I for sure listen to everything that they have to say when it comes to HIPAA and everything that Kim is so skilled at. That's great.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I've got 5 tips. The first one, and this is all about intentional design of your life and your business as it relates to productivity as a therapist. So the first one is design your mission and vision. Number 2, design your ideal work schedule. 3, design your personalized productivity system. Number 4, design your ideal support team. And then number 5, potentially design your practice to make money without you. So those are my 5 tips to becoming a more productive therapist. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So let's start with number 1. Can you say that one again?
Yeah. So number 1 is design your mission and vision. And I think a lot of us have heard about this and we might be connected to this and maybe we're already sort of embodying our mission, vision, and values. But if not, it's something worth exploring. And it's so important to have a personal connection to the reason why you do the work that you do. I mean, obviously as therapists, we don't come into this lightly or easily. It's a long road to becoming a therapist. So we do tend to do the work around that. But as you start a private practice and as you move forward in a private practice, it's even more important to figure out who am I, how do I want to present myself? How do I want to present my services? And even as you get further into your business journey, like what is what gets me out of bed every day? Because for me, I worked with teenage boys for like 15 years. But I had a deep, personal reason why I wanted to help those families and those teenagers. And some of that was connected to me and my story and as a troubled adolescent and that kind of thing. But for your business, it's important to know what you're all about. And that's kind of what fuels productivity, because we don't want to just be busy for being busy's sake.
Yes. And I see that in so many different aspects of our business. One of the things that I have talked to therapists about at times is you need to make sure you're looking at your values when you're creating policies, because if you create a policy that everyone else says is what you need to do, but you can't imagine sitting in front of someone and telling them that policy, maybe it's not matching your values. Maybe you need to tweak it so that it works for you so that you can enforce that. And for me too, that came down to when I decided I didn't want to be on all the insurance panels. I was going to narrow it down to a few. My mission is like you, life experience. So I work with ADHD women and I work with the military. I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and we have a huge military population here. I've grown up my whole life, so I understand the military lifestyle. So taking TRICARE was something that was important to me. And I come from a family of teachers. And so I totally understand what that life is like. And so I take the insurance that our city has that teachers use. And I love working with seniors, so I take Medicare as well. And so looking at those things can really help guide you.
So true. And if you hit a point in your private practice where you are bored or burnout, it's important to revisit the big why that you have. And maybe it changes over time too, because that's definitely possible. I mean, I think for me, it's important to have fun in my work. Like it's always, work is work, but I like to have fun and enjoy what I'm putting my time and energy into.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a unique thing that people are afraid about in the beginning, that we really can shift in a lot of ways. We can shift our schedule. We can shift our client population. There's lots of changes that we can make. And people are sometimes afraid to do that. But I'm like, I think if you contact that client and say you need to move their session, they're probably going to be agreeable because they value you and you're doing a good job and, you're going to figure it out. But, we need to allow ourselves the flexibility that we get to have in this field.
Yeah. And when you're self-employed too, I'm assuming that a lot of your listeners are in that position.
Yes.
It is up to you. And guess what? You are the boss, and you can
Right.
approach yourself and ask for more vacation time. And you can say, hey, maybe we don't want to work with, I'm not going to talk about myself in the third person, but maybe I don't want to work anymore with this client population because it's too hard, or I'm not interested in that anymore. And over time, just reimagining and revisiting how you what you focus on in your private practice, which is actually the next point on this list, which is design your ideal work schedule. I think a lot of us do this naturally, but you do get to choose whether you work nights and weekends. Some of us, for me, it was a little bit harder because I was working with teenage boys and families for so long that like 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock was prime time.
Right.
But I decided over time to shift that and only work 2 nights till 9 o'clock, and then eventually 1, and then eventually none. But really being intentional about your schedule and what times you make available to your clients is really key to designing the life that you are excited to live.
Absolutely. And as our lives shift and change, at various times when my kids were in different ages of school, I needed to be available at different times. And so I have many times over the years shifted when I was seeing clients. And sometimes that does involve shifting the population you're working with. If you can't work evenings, then maybe working with teens is not going to be the best fit for you, or it's going to be a smaller percentage of your population because you can only see, after school hours.
Definitely. So that's super important. And you were talking earlier about figuring out when and how to handle the marketing and or business aspects of the private practice. For me, it was always 4 client days and then 1 admin day. I think a lot of people probably do that.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
Yeah. So I would see clients Monday through Thursdays, and Friday was my admin day. I've shifted now to block scheduling so that I set aside specific times. And I had to really learn. So when I created Collab Oasis, I was finding that, especially in launch, like I was seeing clients and trying to write emails and stuff in between, and progress notes are always going to lose. Like I'm going to say like, oh, I'll write that progress note later. I need to get this quick email out, or, do this quick thing. And so I really had to learn that I needed to shift my clients so that I was seeing all of them on certain days, or, the first part of the day, and then having a block for this other stuff later. So I could really focus on the things I needed to and make a plan too, and some of them it's like Wednesdays is social media email day. Like I have a block of time where I do that,
That's always a productivity tip, no matter who you listen to, is like batching tasks, similar tasks. Like if you've got a bunch of phone calls to make or a bunch of emails to do, don't try to squeeze them in between other things, but set aside time, maybe on a regular basis, to do those things. It sounds like it's working for you, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. Most of the time, next week, because it's a holiday, I've actually So now I'm only seeing clients Monday through Wednesday, and Thursday is my Collab Oasis day. And then Friday is admin for my clinical and all the other stuff. But I do find myself like, well, I can just squeeze in that one client Thursday morning. And then so I find myself getting a little messy with that. And then I have to be like, nope, you designed it this way for a reason. Let's stick with it.
It's so easy to make rules for yourself and for your business and then change them in ways that are not necessarily positive for you.
Yes, exactly.
For me, once I started a group practice, actually before I had a group practice, I had a virtual assistant for a couple of years before that. And she helped with scheduling and kind of setting up new clients in my EHR and those kind of things. If you get to the point where it makes sense, it's helpful to have somebody else who can say no for you.
Exactly. Yes.
Or you communicate your rules to them and then they follow those through for you. For example, like when I was trying to decrease my caseload, I was not talking to potential clients on the phone. It was my virtual assistant who was in the role of intake coordinator. And so I would tell her, hey, Tiffany, I'm not taking on any more clients. So anybody that calls for me, tell them no. And, try to pair them with another therapist, that kind of thing. So, because I was always terrible at saying no, because I would talk to a parent. I would say, oh, I want to work with them. It sounds like an interesting family that I could help, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to not get personally invested, even when you're just doing a consult with somebody and you hear their story. And, most likely they found you because you take care of them as your ideal client. And, and that goes back to the importance. Now I get the importance of a website. I will have new clients come to me and say, I read your website and I knew you were exactly the right therapist for me. I felt like you were talking directly to me. And, so And I think we save energy as well when we work with the right people. I help clients look at, or therapists look at, okay, let's spend a week of, at the end of every session, write down, are you feeling energized? It might have been a hard session, but you might feel energized, or you're feeling drained. And then let's figure out what the commonality is, because the people that are making you drained is someone else's ideal client. They're going to love to see that person. But if I continue to see people who are the wrong fit, it impacts my entire caseload, because then I'm just not as present for them, because I'm too burnt out.
That's so wonderful that you do that with the people you work with. I just learned about that recently, called an energy audit, which is exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Looking at your schedule and either adding a plus or a minus, energy enhancing or energy depleting. And then looking at, like you said, the commonalities. And I think as therapists, sometimes we're such caregivers by nature that we feel obligated to sacrifice ourselves for the benefit of others. But there's a point at which it doesn't make sense. And you shouldn't be working with those clients who frequently, deplete your energy in a way that's not good.
Right. And we're really raised up as therapists to believe that it's all about the client. We're a blank slate. We do whatever they need, whenever they need it. And since the pandemic, I say at least several times a week, we have to put ourselves into the equation. We cannot make every decision solely based on what's best for the client. The pandemic was a huge eye opener for me about energy levels, because, all of us were burnt out. All my friends are like at home organizing their closets and, playing with their kids. And I'm like, I can barely keep up. I have so many clients, like there's no downtime for me here. And I just truly started realizing, like, I'm having a burnout issue here, and I don't see it ending anytime soon. And I have to figure out how I'm going to manage this.
It was a uniquely challenging time that I think made all of us reevaluate how we're spending our time and what we're doing with our lives. Yeah,
absolutely.
Organizing the closet. Yes. So let's see. Number 1 was design your mission and vision. Number 2, design your ideal work schedule. Number 3, design your personalized productivity system. And this is something that I talk about a lot in the book that I just wrote, which is called The Productive Practice. And that book is geared towards group practice owners, helping them grow their group practice while working less. But this applies to anybody who's a business owner. And the importance of making it a personalized productivity system is key, because you're different than I am. And the things that work for me won't necessarily work for you, right? And we're all unique in certain ways. There's a lot of good advice out there on productivity and a lot of good sort of productivity systems, but you and I both have to figure out how to best use our energy. Some people are more effective at focusing in the morning or the afternoon or the evening, that kind of thing. And then some people love using technology tools with to-do planners, or to-do lists rather, like myself. Other people just want to have a notebook and a pen. So figuring out the unique ways that you can get things done and be as efficient as possible is really key. And not everybody thinks about this intentionally. In fact, probably most people don't. They just sort of everybody has a productivity system, even if you don't think about it. And it might be chaos and it might be very unfunctional or it could be very functional. But when you can review that, think about it, like, oh gosh, is this working for me? I was talking to somebody just yesterday, and she's a new mom. She's got a 5-month-old and she's running a group practice, and she was talking about how hard it is to get everything done. And so I asked her a question. I said, do you have a place where you write down your tasks? Seems like such an obvious question to someone like me, at least. And she said, no, I just kind of keep it all in my head, and I'm having a problem figuring out what's most important. And at the end of the day, I feel like I didn't get anything done, that kind of thing. Right. Well, maybe start with writing things down and then deciding which one of those things is the most important for today. Simple stuff, but it works.
Yes, absolutely. And finding the right tools for that too. I went through a ClickUp era where I got everything set up in ClickUp, and I was getting reminders and all this stuff. And after you ignore the reminders so many times, you just end up with this giant blob of reminders and nothing's getting done. So I'm like, okay, I don't think that's the right method for me. But there's so many tools out there. And I honestly do better with a paper planner. I have a paper planner right in front of me that I can see the month, the week, and then there's lots of space where I like to just scribble down, do this email, as things come up, I put them down there. I know they're there, and it's literally right in front of me. I can't ignore it.
Sure. That's great to know. And honestly, anybody who is also neurodivergent needs to find other strategies that are probably not the ones that productivity people talk about as much.
Right.
Like
Yes.
I was talking to somebody recently who said that the best way for them to get things done is to do co-working, is to be with another
Oh,
human,
yes.
whether it's on
Yes.
Zoom or in person.
100%.
And some people, like my daughter, really does best getting her homework done while watching TV.
Yeah. I
It's just-
learned that
yeah.
with my kids. 2 of the 3 are neurodivergent, and I
Mhm.
didn't even know it had a name. When somebody named it for me, I was like, oh, wow. Because I
Yeah.
realized that my
Right.
daughter needed someone in the room to do her homework. She didn't need help with her homework. I would literally sit her at the kitchen table and make dinner, or her room would be a mess. So she'd call a friend and say, hey, you want to come hang out? And her friend would hang out and chat and listen to music while my daughter cleaned her room. And I was like, body doubling, it's like a real thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this, but there's a great service called Focus Mate that I've been hearing about. One of my
I have heard
members
of that.
told me about it.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's free for like a lot. I mean, you would have to use it a ton in order to need to pay for it. But a lot of the therapists that I've talked to are loving that.
That's great. Yeah, I heard about that like a year ago or so, and I tried it out. And then I realized for me, that's not something that I want. But for a lot of folks, it's really helpful to do that co-working. Did you say body doubling? I like that.
Well, co-working, body doubling,
Yeah.
it's sort of like co-working, but body
Mhm.
doubling just means that there's another person there. They're not necessarily doing the
Right.
same thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's quite the interesting phenomenon.
So that's always my recommendation. Figure out what works best for you. How do you manage your tasks and projects? How and when do you focus best? So that's key. Number 4 on my list is design your ideal support team. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier with, for me, having somebody handle my yard work, for you, having somebody clean your house. And I'm talking about getting support inside of your private practice and also just in your life in general. And for like somebody who has a solo private practice, that could be, like we mentioned, hiring somebody to build a website for you. Maybe you need to hire a bookkeeper, or what are other things? I had a virtual assistant for like 3 years in my private practice, and that was super helpful. Just like literally it was about 10 hours a month to help me with some admin tasks. But if you try to go too long with doing everything yourself, you will flirt with burnout, I like to say.
Yes. Yes.
Because it just becomes too much. Unless you have a really part-time private practice and it's really not that stressful at all, and it's pretty easy to, do your marketing and any networking and those kind of things. That's totally workable. But my advice is always to build a team to support you in your life and in your work.
Yeah. And I think the way that shows up for me is, when I do launches for my consultation groups, I have a group of colleagues that all have side hustles, and we have a Voxer group of launching. So we're there to ask questions and share ideas and support. And then in terms of the clinical aspects of that, if, one of the things that people don't think of, but with the clinical consultation groups, we don't just talk about cases, but we talk about running a small practice, marketing, networking, how the work impacts us and all that stuff. And so you can't do this work in isolation. And I think, a lot of people step into it thinking they're going to do that, but it's isolating and lonely. And you're just gearing yourself up to be really crispy.
Right. And we don't all have colleagues down the hall, like literally.
Exactly. Right.
like
literally,
you don't,
we don't.
right? You don't even have a hallway where there's other colleagues.
No, I don't. And so when I was in my first went into solo practice, I was in a building that there was a waiting room, but then the door opened out to the parking lot. So there was literally no one else there. And I had no idea how isolated and lonely I was going to be in a solo practice. And so I had to figure out that quickly. And once you sort of realize that those types of communities and partners and support people can, that's a thing, and that you can allow yourself to hire out for that or create that or find it. It really is a game changer.
It is. Yeah. And I also mentioned too, business coaching, I think is really, really valuable. I've worked with business coaches for years before I became a business coach. And I think that's super helpful, as well as mastermind groups. If anybody has been in one or considered that. I'm currently in 2 peer-led mastermind groups, so none of us pay anything for it. We just show up and help each other, kind of like a consultation group, but more business focused, right? I think those kind of things are really, really helpful, especially as we're doing more remote work.
I agree. Absolutely. And there's so much changing in our field. And that has to do with, things like terminology and understanding people who are different than yourself, but also technology changes and things like AI. And so having people to share those ideas with and get support. And, one of the biggest things I hear from people that join my program is it's really scary in therapist Facebook groups. And I was like, yes, it really is scary in there. I don't really understand why. And it's a little kind of disconcerting, but yeah, you got to find the people that are there to build you up and support you. And you want to do that with people that maybe you get to know a little bit, not like some random stranger that's gonna, judge you when they don't really know the full story.
Yeah, I'm laughing, but it's kind of tragic, when you see
It
things
is.
unfold in a Facebook group of helping professionals who are doing not helpful things to each other.
Yeah. I mean, I actually do an onboarding with my members. The culture of my program is benevolence, support, and respect. And so part of the onboarding is like, let's talk about the use of language, and let's talk about sharing an idea that might be different than someone else's. And, how can we be supportive instead of critical? Well, let's get curious and ask questions before we immediately assume they're doing something wrong,
I think the favorite word of a lot of therapists that's misused is unethical.
Oh, unethical.
Right.
Oh my gosh. I hear that all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
All the
so
time.
easy to misuse that.
Yes.
The last tip on my list here is design your practice to make money without you. And obviously it's easier to be productive when you are not having to show up for every minute of every hour that makes you $1.
Yes.
Right? And I know that the cool thing is that a lot of therapists are expanding into various kinds of, you use the word side hustle, various kinds of endeavors that are beyond the private practice room, so to speak.
Yes.
Whether that's building an online course, starting a podcast like you've done, various trainings or programs, writing books, like the list is endless of creative endeavors you can do, leveraging your therapeutic skills into helping people in other ways. It took me a while to realize that what I had created in my private practice was a high-paying job, whereby I had to actually show up if I wanted to get paid. And so if I went on vacation, we all experience this, right? So hard to go on vacation because you're like, if I'm going to be gone for a week, that's actually a lot of money. And then I have to pay for the vacation. And it's like this terrible conundrum, right? So any way that you can pursue creating something that makes money without you having to show up over and over again is going to help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it takes a while for therapists to, find the buy-in that they're experts at something and that there are ways they can do that. There are ways that they can take their clinical skills and help others, or write a book, or run workshops, or, so many different things, run retreats. There's so many exciting things that therapists are doing out there that are additional income streams that, you don't have to do the one-on-one work, which is draining. And like you said, I mean, I just was chatting with a friend the other day. I had a terrible headache last week, and I'm like debating about whether or not I need to cancel these next two clients. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I like talk to people about this all the time. Just cancel the clients. But, is that, well, there's the loss of the income, and then they are going to need to be seen. So when am I going to fit them in? And, and then there's the guilt because I'm supposed to put the client first. It's so complex.
It really is. Yeah. Even being sick as a therapist is really hard because it's like all the decisions you have to make about, can I show up? Can I appear not sick? I don't want to cancel. I never wanted to cancel a client, for any reason, but it's necessary. It's necessary for self-care and for just your own well-being and all those kind of things. But if the entirety of your income is not dependent on you showing up, that it's just a great thing. Like I went on a short vacation with my family to Seattle last week. It was really, really fun. Got to do some great things. And when I go away for 5 days or 2 weeks or whatever it is, at this point in my career, my income is not impacted at all, like zero, which is wonderful. It's hard. I mean, it's hard to get to that point, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah. Absolutely. And just, to me, it just still comes back to that permission. So I got better with my private practice of setting boundaries and, not seeing clients when I was on vacation. But with my consultation groups for the first 3 years, I facilitated my groups even on vacation.
Right.
And I just had this guilt, like they're paying me, I have to be there. And so I was going somewhere in January, and last year was a really hard year for me. And I was telling them, like, I'm going to be in a different time zone. So I'm, going to work really hard to make sure I don't mess up the time. They're like, can you not? And I was like, what? They're like, can you just be on vacation and not facilitate our group? And I was like, well, you're paying me. They're like, I was like reverse conversation of what I'm used to having. They were like, we don't want you to facilitate the group. We can do it ourselves. We'll be good without you for one session. It's all good. And it was a very cool experience.
That's a gift.
Yeah, absolutely.
We all need permission in some way or form or fashion to do what we know is best for us and for our families. Like that's so hard, but it is really freeing when you get that. You give yourself or somebody else gives you the permission to not do the thing that you really don't need to do in that moment. Yeah. And there's so many things that we tell our clients that we don't do ourselves. And it's one of those things where it gets thrown back in your face and you're like, oh yeah, you're right. I probably told 5 clients this week that they need to do that. And I'm not doing that myself. I've been learning that from my teenage daughters a lot recently because they're very quick to point out when I'm asking them to do something that I'm not following myself.
Right.
They're like, yeah, but you're not doing it. Got me there. And sometimes they're just 100% right. I can't even argue with them.
Right.
Yeah. So I do want to say that side hustles and expanding beyond one-on-one work is not easy. It's a lot of work and you do have to be thoughtful, mindful, intentional about it. But it's something that is an option for you if you want to pursue it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So to recap the 5 tips to be a productive therapist. Sorry, I'm like in teacher mode here. But
that's good. That's all good.
It's helpful. So the first one is design your mission and vision. The second one, design your ideal work schedule. The third one is design your personalized productivity system. Number 4, design your ideal support system or team rather. And then number 5, design your practice to make money without you.
Those are also important. And they're the things that, well, the first couple a new practitioner might be willing to hear. The other ones, they're never going to believe you. It just takes time and figuring out, what's what and what you're capable of and what your goals are,
We're all on a journey. It takes time to get where you want to go. That's okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Uriah, I have really enjoyed talking with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Would you let the listeners know where they can find out more about you and your program, your company and your book and all those things? Yeah, absolutely. Everything is over at productivetherapist.com. And the book is The Productive Practice, if you want to check that out. And we've got tons of resources. I've got a podcast called The Productive Therapist, and it's all about empowering therapists to be more productive and work less. Great. That's wonderful. And that's what so many of us need these days. So we'll put that contact information in the show notes. And for everyone listening, there are new episodes of the Colleague Down the Hall podcast released every Thursday on all major platforms. Please remember, our work is hard, but it doesn't have to be lonely. Thank you so much for listening to the Colleague Down the Hall podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to colleaguedownthehall.com, where you'll be able to learn more about getting the clinical support you need and resources to help you work in a supported, sustainable way. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your therapy friends and colleagues. Subscribe to the podcast, and if you love this episode, please leave a review.